you on the call today, Andrew. Sorry, John Jenkins, not John Grantham. And so by way of introducing what you do, let's pick up on what we did from last week. First of all, I mean, are there any thoughts or reflections or things that people had on, you know, I suppose when you're thinking back on it, thinking what were some of the key takeouts that you had, which you think might be worth just repeating again? Did anybody have a sense of that?
Well, I think it's completely different from the kind of traditional business models. So it's quite a refreshing way to look at it. And I find this much more encouraging because I always battle with those other business plans where I just get bogged down because it's like, oh, what, and here, and you've got to sort of figure out this. And I think this is much more that, I like that whole thing about the, what is the problem? Focus on the problem and not on the solution. Mm. And I think that's quite good because it flips it around from where you are taking it and actually, you know, focusing it more down onto the customer and how you're solving their problem. And then that makes it feel much better for you as a, you know, someone coming up with an idea that you actually are going to help somebody somewhere there, rather than it's just, oh, this is an idea I've got. So I like that. It gives it a bit more focus. So thank you.
Well, that's good. Well, we'll definitely kind of drill into that in more details today. So look, why don't we just, time is precious. So let's just dive in. And I know I set you all a bit of homework, or Andrew did, or between us we did. So maybe we could start by, if you could look at, maybe not go through the whole canvas, but just give us a taste of some of the things that you found out and you're thinking about from the business point of view. So I asked about what's the problem you're trying to solve, who is or are the customers you're targeting, what solution you'll deliver to achieve this, and what is unique about your solution over other options. So just some of those key points that come out from the Lean Model Canvas. So anybody like to volunteer to start, or do you want me just to pick someone? Okay, everyone's looking away from me now. So I'm going to ask John, could you start, please, Grantham? You can't actually hear you, John. No. I'll tell you, I'll leave you to sort that out. Cecile, can I jump back to you maybe, and then ask you to start while John's sorting out a microphone?
Yeah, I sort of did get a bit distracted, but essentially I'm going to pick one segment market, which I've just done with Caroline, which is learning English as a second language, and probably focusing now, because I have more connections with the Russian market, just for example. So the problem is essentially there's not, the problem that people face is that they want to learn English. It's important for them to learn English. We're talking about middle class Russians, learn English without an accent, and they don't have access to those, you know, English books, or in the English, the conversations, the pronunciations. And also they have a desperate need, there is a need for them to get cultural, what's the word, sort of enculturation in the English thing. So they want to embrace because they're all linguists anyway. So literature is really important to them, and they already have a knowledge and understanding of literature. So it's not a big leap, because Russians are very, so that's their problem. They want to learn English. They have a lack of facilities to get there. There is already a kind of quite a big English language kind of access to it. So who my segments is, the customer segments will definitely be parents of children and parents of parents in a way, so going from the little children up, and then there will be individual learners. So that will be so probably young adults who have their own income, but definitely parents on the first thing. My solution is my fantastic English classic story time video books. Thank you, Andrew, for that, just saying video books, because I've been putting audio books to link up with SEO. So that's the solution. It's easy to access. It's reasonably cheap. It gives them resources which they are needing. And then I'm also going to introduce some other element that means that I can build up a community, because that will be the key for more engagement, is to build up the community. So there's on my platform, there's a place that you can make comments, but we can have maybe like a virtual book club, you know, kind of aspect to it, so that they can be included and make some discussion on that side, or not, it depends on the thing. And what's unique about mine is that it's video books as opposed to audio books. It's more intimate. It's more a personal engagement with the individual, with the readers. You do get you can listen and you can read at the same time. You can engage in that aspect, and you can have the illustrations. You get the book. So basically you get a book as well, and you can listen as many times as you want to and keep on repeating and learning. And because it's like English speakers, all the nuances and the pronunciations and the subtleties of the language can be heard and then picked up.
Fabulous. Andrew, have you got any thoughts?
No, nothing immediately. I think even in just from that, Cecile, I think it's really good the way you've evolved it since you started talking about it last week. So you can see that it's evolving into a more substantial and more thought through proposition. So yeah, great start, absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Fabulous. Okay, well that sounds good. Carolyn, let me turn round to you, please.
My mute button. So the problem that I'm trying to solve is around there currently only being a one-sided view of human behavior around technology, and it's a very journalistic eyeballs on screen, trying to make money from advertising revenue kind of viewpoint. So what's the solution that I'm wanting to deliver is really to have a two-sided view of technology, the good and the bad, not just the bad, which is always out in the public domain. So, for example, if mobile phones or social media is good, but it's also bad, the virtual reality gaming is bad, but it's also good. So kind of having that real double-sided view or two-sided view of human behavior and technology. And then I'm going to, why this is unique is that no one else is currently got a website or a journal or magazine, so whether it's online or offline, that is actually completely dedicated to cyber psychology. And anything that is cyber psychology related is only really found in academic journals. So it's not in any way, shape or form accessible by Joe Public. So it's a very unique proposition in that no one else is doing that. And then going up to who is your customers and who you're targeting. I think from last week, one of the things I really kind of got down to was actually businesses and potentially journalists are the only people who really have any element of money to sign up to a membership site. So rather than kind of lots of different targets right now, I was just really focusing on a business audience. My challenge then is kind of how to find the right kind of material that will be appealing to them and something that they'd want to sign up for membership to. Yeah, and I think that's really the kind of summary of the things that I got from last month. It's really started to focus me in on one type of customer, which is a lot different from what I was doing 2 weeks ago.
Well, that sounds good. Andrew, I'm sort of like thinking that you're just going to pick up on any of the things on here if you want to lead on this, because I'm going to talk a lot later. So if they hear from you now, that probably would be better.
Yeah, so I think on that one, Carolyn, again, I think you've shown there's real a change in dynamic and emphasis, which I think is really positive. I think you're still maybe thinking about I think you need to maybe think about how we phrase the problem. I'm still not sure I know who that's a problem for. I know it is a problem, but I don't know who's got the problem, if that makes sense. So I know
Yes, it does.
I completely appreciate it is a problem, but I'm not sure who it's for, because if I'm seeing my own little rose-tinted view of the world and I'm happy with it, I don't recognise your problem. So I completely understand where you're coming from. I just think it might need to think about, you might need to think about how you articulate the problem statement, because I think once you do that, it may really help you to get a clearer view on who your customer is. Because I think, if I could give you a hint there, I think the problem, it's a problem that the technology companies face, not consumers. So the consumers probably don't really care whether it's balanced or not. They just generally take in what they take in. But the challenge is it's a problem for the technology companies, because you could argue they're being badly treated or less than equally treated, because there's a lot of potentially negative press around digital medium, digital consumption, etc. So that's their problem. It's not a consumer's problem, it's their program. So your customer's right. But I think by thinking about that, I think that might help you figure out how you solve the problem. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
I don't want to put words, I'm not trying to, I've got in my head what I think it should be, but that's for you to find out. So think through it a little bit. Just spend time thinking about it. That's all it is. You're definitely on the right lines. There's definitely something there. I think just think around that problem, you may be able to articulate who your customer is and how you solve the problem a little bit more clearly.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would say on that, and this is a general point actually, if when I speak to startup founders, if they say nobody's doing it, that generally tells me that they haven't looked hard enough. Because there's very, very little that is absolutely unique to you.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere will be doing something really similar. You just haven't found them yet.
Because psychology is such a new field that there is only so many people that are actually doing it, and I know them all. So I know.
But the thing I would say there is there are lots of people that write about why technology isn't that bad.
Yes, but it's not all in one place.
Right. So maybe that helps you figure out how you solve the problem. But there are people writing about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. That's fine.
Lovely. Okay. Who's next? Mariella, would you like to go next?
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so the problem I try to solve is parenting overwhelm, a stressful or negative childhood, mental health issues, and lack of milestone, or we can say development delays. So the next question is, which customer I'm targeting is parents, individual, B2B, B2C, and later professionals like teachers, psychologists, or people who work with children. And in the third tier, business like hospitals, people who also work with children, but more business-wise, or wholesale in the future. Like imagine I have my products and they can resell it, but that's gonna be like later on. Which solution I will deliver? So I will deliver quality and long-lasting resources, because for example, the nurseries and parents, they don't want that the products break if they make an investment. Mindful, natural, eco-friendly resources, because this is the trend. Interactive and original, because it's difficult to engage with children and make the children to get the emotions or their things out. So need to be original, interactive. And I think the most I can offer, like to differentiate, is to offer guidance, because the people sometimes doesn't know how to use the resources. So I'm gonna explain all the process. Like you're gonna have this bundle, and with this bundle, you're gonna introduce to your child from this age the healthy eating behaviors. So this is when I think I can differentiate, like just to don't offer the tools or the toy, just to give the whole process, and they can like, no, okay, I have this, I have the instruction, and I can use it in my family or in my setting. The other question was, Well, basically, how I gonna deliver that, or what is unique, is again the guidance, sense of community that you're gonna be grab it up, and I'm gonna help you through the process. Do you have any question?
So what, you're going to do like a bundle of well-being for young people? So with resources, with things to smell, with stuff to...
Oh, it's gonna be a mix of educational resources, basically, and toys. And they're gonna aim to introduce and encourage the health and well-being from an early age. So I'm gonna have the individual products, so everyone can buy one product, but I also gonna offer this bundle that you can like tackle that topic of health with your child. It's gonna be sometimes feelings, emotion, healthy.
Yeah,
body.
so you can even do a subscription thing like that as well. So
I
this
think
week, this month we're doing the smells. These are the smells. If you want to feel calm, have this.
Relaxation techniques, depends what issue you want to tackle, or if you want to tackle all the health and well-being together, you can like have all. I think the subscription is gonna be later on when I have more expertise and I know better my target, my customer, to see what they want. I think right now it's gonna be e-commerce and selling the products. They find me by Google, like Amazon, when you have a problem or you want to teach math to your child, and you go to Google to check math resources for your child. So I think the subscription gonna be later on when I have more expertise and more time to develop individual solutions. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. My thoughts there, Maria, is again really good evolution. I think maybe thinking around where you start and how you pitch it may be the key there, because you're covering potentially, as Cecile says, you're potentially covering a very, very broad set of topics. And I know you have a lot of products there, but I'd maybe suggest thinking around one area to try and get your breadth of topic to the level of detail that you need. So even then, you mentioned about maths, and we talked about well-being, and we talked about eating, and they're very different. They're very different things. So don't set yourself up too big a challenge to try and get to the point where you can start. You're better off starting with one or two things and then trying to get people to sell those to understand whether people will buy those, and then build that right, rather than build 8 things in the wrong way that nobody will buy, if that makes sense. So maybe just think about where you really want to start on that journey.
It's been a really challenging, because the topic is health and well-being, but when I start to get out, the people don't get that. So I need to sell it like educational resources, like, and later.
Yeah, people need to, the thing that the question that was having in my head all the time you were talking about that is that I don't actually know what it is. I know what health and well-being is, but I don't know when I buy a product what I'm actually going to get. I'm like, what is it? What am I touching? What am I feeling? What am I seeing? And I think people need to be able to make the connection between what your proposition is and what they physically or auditory or whatever, what they consume. And if they can't see that gap, and this comes to the value proposition stuff that Anthony's going to talk about. If they can't see that gap, it's very difficult for them to make the leap to buy something, because they'll just don't know. They won't know.
Definitely. This has been a long challenge I have to get across my point of view, because I believe that working in a mental health facility and seeing children struggling, I can see that we have a gap there, that we are just teaching math, literacy, and not focusing. I'm so sorry. Alicia, can you put it down? So it's really difficult to get across my point. So what I did was educational resources, and I put these topics of health and well-being, how you can showing literacy is show communication skill to your child, how you can show in math and problem solving, how you can teach the colors and the fruits and introduce healthy eating, how you can, so what's difficult to find a match, but I'm trying to get there, and still sell it as educational resources for now, until I get stronger my speech.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, again, you just need to keep working that, going along the same path. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's gonna take me time because even myself, I need to research more to make the link in each product. So right now it's like educational resources to don't make it too complicated. And still I sell the pitch of introduce independently play and positive mindset.
Well, as Andrew said, we're going to come into this in a bit more detail in a while. So let's park that there for the moment and we'll come back to it. Judith, have you had the chance to work on this?
Yes, it's still an idea in my head,
Okay.
but I've been writing things down. It's related to Mariella, but it's larger. Mine is more of an umbrella concept for health, and I've been very interested in health and involved in a voluntary way with health for the last 15 years. I've been to exhibitions all over the world and conferences, and I've also been a governor of not only my local regional hospital, but also the health for the entire county I live in. So I've seen all sorts of problems and some things, basically how to drill down. So my concept is to help people help themselves in health. And the thought is this, the concept is, we've had this wonderful health service where access to doctors free and NHS hospital services are free. And they say it goes from the cradle to the grave. So we've all become very, very, very dependent on the NHS. We think we can just go to the doctor, ask for a pill or some ointment or some
Judith.
lotion
Judith.
to cure everything.
Mm-hmm. Judith, sorry to interrupt you, but you're keep cracking out. I just wonder, it might be worth turning your video off and just going on to voice so it doesn't use so much bandwidth.
Okay, stop video. Yes, I have heard that. I've got some new Wi-Fi extenders to make this. By next week it should be better. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better?
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay, so wait, that's my concept, to help people help themselves, especially as we can see through this coronavirus COVID pandemic, that everyone's common sense is going to be very, very, very important. The doctors and the scientists don't necessarily know any more than we all do. So my idea is to have a central hub for health, which is trusted and unique selling proposition. And this is for Andrew as well, that it should be very simple, but very effective, because, and it should cover everything from your head to your toes. So for instance, if I have a health problem and I want to research it, I want to go on to this site, which will not only help me with trusted answers, but will also signpost me to trusted sites. Because what I found is that if there is a big health problem, you have to work very, very hard to find trusted information. There's an awful lot of marketing. There's an awful lot of take this pill or take this, that or the other. Buy it, it's very expensive, or join my club, it's a doctor will say it's also very expensive. So I want to make it easy for people to help solve their own problems. So who has the problem? You asked at the beginning. So if I can say, well, everyone has a problem because they're looking after their own health. So I want to narrow it down to savvy customers, savvy meaning people who have access to the internet and know how to use email, text, and can use it. So there has to be a modicum of understanding. I'm also a volunteer in my local surgeries. I've been the deputy chair of the patient participation groups. So what that has helped me understand is that by talking to actual patients, is that 80% of patients cannot and do not know how to help themselves. So that's my thought in a nutshell. So I see the NHS as, I see everyone as customers, the NHS as customers, referrals through the medical profession, but it's the main thread has got to be simplicity and trustworthiness.
Great.
And how to deliver this. Someone mentioned, I think it was Cecile mentioned membership, which is also in my mind, but my thought is how to help people help themselves with all their own health problems from their head to their toe. So if I've got something wrong with my hand or my foot or my legs or my mental well-being, I can come onto this site, whether it's for parents or children, and not only give them information straight away, but also signpost them to trusted other sites. I hope that's not too long-winded.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
I've just tried to articulate in a very concise way what I've been wrestling with for maybe a year.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Judith.
And I'm very pleased to join this group because I think we have all the skills we need in our group to solve everyone's problems. I'm very pleased to be part of it.
Excellent. Andrew, any thoughts?
Nothing beyond that. What you just talked about, Judith, is huge. I mean, there's such a lot there in terms of what you're trying to do. You know, it's become like a Wikipedia for the body to a certain degree, or however we want to think about it, or Wikipedia for ailments, and the body is obviously a very big undertaking. And there are obviously lots of people out there already who, both mainstream and alternative medicine, offer commentaries, sites that will try and do the same thing, although won't do everything. So again, I think it's about where you start. You know, when people come to the site for the first time, or what will they see? What will they do? And again, I think we'll come back to that in Anthony's talks in a short while. But yeah, great, bold, big vision.
Yeah.
Yes,
no,
thank you very much.
Yeah, and trying to find your niche in amongst the clutter is going to be an interesting one as well. John, you're back with us as a microphone. You're on. No, I still can't hear you. Okay, well, maybe we'll pause there, and you can be an observatory capacity here rather than until we can find out whether you've got a different microphone squirreled away somewhere you can plug in, or yeah, no, my lip reading's not up to much either. So well, look, let's we're gonna dance. Amazing. Look, let's pause there. Sebastian's also joined. I don't know if you can hear me if you're there, Sebastian.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Brilliant. So Sebastian had a few issues about kind of the details and everything and joining in. But anyway, lovely to have you here as well. So Sebastian, I think we're just going to crack on. Do you want to give us a 30-second overview of the company?
Right. Yeah, so we build immersive experiences that are accessible on variety of devices, and we mainly focused until that stage on real estate, so provide virtual tour of houses and properties. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it is. We have an app in beta version, and we also build custom immersive tools.
Great. Okay. Well, look, we'll come into a bit more detail as the session goes on. So thank you everyone for that. Thanks for putting a bit of time in to think about all the stuff that we talked about last week. John, I sent you a copy of the Lean Canvas. Maybe have a chat through that at another time just to explain kind of a little bit more about it. So yeah, let's dive into the value proposition. So I'm going to share my screen in a second. There it goes. Okay, hold on a second. Right, so can you see something that says SciSo sessions? Is that yes? Yes, good. Okay, great. Right, hold on with me so I can just see you all still. Great. Okay. Right, okay, so today it's about product fit. So that's kind of like the kind of the key focus of what we're looking about. And sort of things about trying to think about, well, what is product market fit? How do you achieve product market fit? And some things around the value proposition. I mean, we're talking about challenges that we have, we're talking about the problems that people have, and just kind of try and quantify that in some shape or form towards the end. So product market fit is something which is talked about quite a lot, but it's quite hard really to pin it down. What it really means for me is that it's something that your product fits in with something that somebody else needs. So it's about providing something that suits what people are doing or how they think, and it can help them in some shape or form. So product market fit really is actually product people fit. It's not about a market per se. It's about trying to particularize this and think about, well, who are the people I've got to engage with? Who are the people who are going to care with what I'm doing? So, you know, it's people that you have to sell to ultimately. So you have to understand them really, really well and understand what is a customer, what's my customer look like? So there are lots of tactics that you can use to try and define this product market fit, but the most important one is trying to invest that time that it really takes to understand who the people are that you're trying to market to. So we're going to start with, I'll remember to try and actually use the slides, the things I've done them. Anyway, so here's an example of one. So Jenna Farmer, I like to go back to Jenna every year or two. So Jenna Farmer is a very niche individual. So she has got a blog and a presence on Twitter and on Facebook and wherever. So I think I first came across Jenna about 4 or 5 years ago. And so she had almost 6,000 followers. And she is able to she was making about £75,000 a year as an influencer. And her topic was irritable bowel syndrome. So it's a pretty niche thing, and it's you know, something that not everyone feels comfortable about talking. But so she's had this concept called the balanced belly, and that's what she focuses on. And it's been interesting that in terms of trying to define what her market is, it's simple. It's people who've got irritable bowel syndrome, and there wasn't very much information about this. And it's kind of interesting, kind of picking up on what Judith was saying earlier on. So, you know, it's about trying to share information, insights, tips, topics, links to products, whatever it is, all that you need to try and get over this condition. And she's been making a really successful, small, single-person business, but out of doing this. So I think last year, or year and a half ago, we looked at her, and you know, it's also interesting seeing how Twitter changes. But you know, then she had 8,200 followers, and and also noticed that she's pregnant as well in this one. And so a year and a half later, she's obviously had the baby. She's now got to 9,000 followers. And you're thinking, well, if a few years ago she was making 75,000 as an influencer in this area, now that she's got a few more people, then that's probably going to be an even healthier salary that she's getting. But what's interesting about this is that she has really understands the issues that her customers have got. And that's what we're trying to do. It's hard to, you know, she's got a very particular and a very precise product. And in a way that makes things easier because there is a simple, straightforward condition that she's got to deal with and talk about. And she's been able to do that, farm that, as the name suggests, really, really well. So I think that's kind of quite interesting. And that's what we're trying to do, is to understand, here is a set of customers with a particular issue, and I have got a product which can help you resolve that issue. And if we can bring those two things together in a way that these people want and care about, that is it. That's how your business is going to work. So it's about providing the right solution for the right person and explaining why the product is valuable to them as well. I'm going to come on to that in a bit more detail. So I have looked around. This is something around the 5 steps to finding product market fit. So let's start with the first one. So I think, why do your customers give 2 hoots about you? And it's all about the why. So I'm going to start off by looking at this idea in terms of defining, how do you really understand the value of what your product is? So this normally takes a couple of seconds to load up. Oh, and now we get ads.
Medicine and engineering.
Right, so are you familiar with Simon Sinek at all? Have you come across Simon Sinek? Okay, okay, so I mean, to be honest, I know that you all of you guys, I mean, you've all got a lot of experience, and I know not all of this is new, but what I want to try and get from today is, it may be stuff that's familiar, but I'm not sure whether you all have had enough time to think about, how do these things apply to you in this position that you're in right now. So it's to try and have the luxury of, you know, you've offered up a couple of hours of your time just to spend it thinking about, okay, how does this affect me? Not just how does this affect the customers that I might talk about this stuff because I know about it, but this is specifically about you. So I won't go into a huge thing if you know about it, but let's just start off anyway. And
assume, or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition, and yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight? The Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean, what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one.
Anyway, so that is just a kind of thought in terms of introduction of what we're trying to do. I'm not sure, it's interesting kind of looking back on that, of thinking that his example he gave there with Apple was interesting, but I thought the example very much focused on Apple as a company and what they were doing and what their why was. But I think kind of what we want to focus on today actually is the why of the customers and trying to put that focus really on them. What is it that motivates them and how do you try and connect in with what you're doing? And let's look into that in a bit more detail. So in terms of areas where, I'm not going to show the other video because we're limited with time actually, and but it's essentially Steve Jobs saying a very similar thing in terms of how do they develop what it is that they do as a company and really focus on how they believe people operate and what people want and trying to keep that in mind all the time that they're going through. So I thought I might show a couple of examples of, it works very strongly when it doesn't work as well. So here we are. So this is when Y goes wrong. So here are a few examples of sort of perfectly feasible products, but they just kind of disappeared. So I don't know, does anybody ever see Pepsi AM? Because when you get up and you're having breakfast, what you want is cola. That's what you need to go with your cornflakes. So anyway, Pepsi AM didn't really work because, it just didn't connect with what people wanted. Cheetos lip balm, anyone? Anyone remember these? Taste them, that's the aftertaste. That's the bit you want to get rid of from the Cheetos. So cheesy lips, again, didn't really connect with anything that people wanted. MySpace. I mean, MySpace was fantastic. I don't know if any of you remember MySpace. I'm sure some of you do. Phenomenally successful. It was, and it was interesting because you thought, it is connecting with the why. This is what people want. But then suddenly, it had that first mover advantage. But then along came Facebook, and Facebook actually turned out that they connected really with what people wanted, and they weren't asking enough questions. They thought they had the answer, but Facebook came in and just wiped them off the face of the earth. I mean, yeah, it's lovely to see that, you know, Rupert Murdoch spent millions and millions of pounds buying it in advance, and you know, it's always nice to see the Murdoch press getting a bit of a hit. But anyway, that's a side issue. So the key was the need that what MySpace did was presented information. What Facebook did was to create meaningful connections. And actually that's what the people wanted. That's what they wanted from their social media. Monday, I don't know, kind of, so PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers as they were, you know, they wanted to have a new brand for their consultancy arm. So they paid Wolf Ollins, a big brand agency in London, huge amounts of money to come up with it. And they come up with the name Monday. And it failed because Monday's the worst day of the week. You know, why does anybody want to start working with somebody called Monday? It just didn't make any sense. I mean, I say that, but then again, actually, part of the why is also to do with timing, because now we're in a sort of a, I don't know, a post-truth, ironic kind of position. Actually, Monday.com is succeeding really well at the moment. And so that's a relatively new thing, and that seems to be chiming in particularly. So, you know, the why can shift. Why is constantly shifting, and things can succeed quite well. And then when why goes right, we take an example like Uber. You know, Uber's got a very clear proposition, and what it did was it looked and it saw what is the issue. The issue is taxi drivers are lying bastards who you know, will tell you that they've turned up outside your house or they're going to be there in 5 minutes, and we know that's not true. No disrespect to taxi drivers, it's the operators you have to blame, really. Anyway, so yeah, and it was just a kind of dysfunctional thing, but we just thought, oh well, that's just the way it is. And along come Uber and says, oh, hold on, why don't we use this? We got one of these. We could just, you know, create a direct connection between the driver. We can cut out that operator who's the person you call who says, I know the taxi turned up and nobody was there, and you're going, I've been standing outside the whole time. Clearly it didn't, you know, all that nonsense that we had to go through. Along comes Uber and works out what people really want is you know, is something where they can just connect with something and they know it's going to be there when they're going to see it. Not only that, they can actually see where the taxi is. They can see where it's moving around going, oh, you know, that's kind of like a whole gamification element of it as well. So really thinking through how do we connect in with our customers? And it works in brilliant, and you can see what's happened. Eventbrite, again, you know, Eventbrite is kind of interesting because, you know, we use this. I mean, you know, people have signed up for this through Eventbrite. It's a really practical tool. And what it does is it's, although the focus really is on the people signing up, the customers are actually the middle people, because it was a pain in the ass to try and organize the ability to sign up for events. You know, we don't have that capability on websites. So if we knew somebody else's to do that for us, it overcomes a huge issue, challenge, barrier, block that we have in that hassle of trying to sell tickets to people directly. So again, phenomenally good in terms of really understanding, you know, it's not about the product. The fact that you present something which is you know, where people can buy tickets, that isn't it. It's about the connection that you're able, and it's about overcoming the challenge that we would have in terms of trying to do this ourselves. So I think, you know, those are some sort of thoughts and examples about kind of how that can work. So how do you understand what it is that customers want? So these are the 5 steps to trying to develop that product market fit, and making sure that you fulfill that need where you can provide the use that Uber and Eventbrite were able to achieve. So understanding a particular market really means understanding the people in that market. And you know, this can sometimes be called the buyer persona. So, you know, your company, as Cecile was talking about earlier on, might have multiple buyer personalities, buyer personas that you're trying to connect with, but it's probably worth trying to focus on one at a time with the offer and thinking about what that offer is. And ultimately, the people you've got to connect are the people who are going to pay with you, because unless you connect with the people who pay, you're not going to generate any revenue. So that's really important. So when it comes to the persona, you can start to think about, you know, what's the role in the company you need to talk about if it's a kind of B2B thing, or if it's, let's start with B2B. So, you know, are they the decision maker? What's their title? What knowledge, what tools are they using in their job? How large is the business they work for? How long have they worked there for? What kind of revenue? What's the size of the business that you need to connect in with people? You know, there's for certain products, you probably need people who are at a certain scale, otherwise they may not be able to afford to pay it, or you've got a harder sell in terms of people justifying what that expense is going to be. You know, with customers generally, you know, what do they look like? Associations, what networks do they have? What's their social grouping? Who do they belong with? What is there an educational background that they might have? Are they, you know, getting to a degree level, or is it just a kind of something that doesn't matter? Are they married? Have they got children? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? Do you have a particular attraction to a gender, or to an age range, or to a household income? You know, who are these people? Start to think about it. You know, and in terms of, again, what they're trying to achieve, what are they responsible for, whether that's in a personal or a business context? What does it mean to be successful for them? I mean, in a business context, you know, for their role, how do they justify their existence? What's their definition of success? And on a personal level, what makes them happy? You know, what makes them, facilitates their life, improves their life in some shape or form? What is it that they're trying to achieve? And what are their long-term goals? And then I think the big thing is trying to understand what are the challenges to those persona successes. What's stopping them from being successful? You know, and when I mean success, you know, you think back to Uber, that success is only about the success of getting home in a reasonable amount of time. That's the definition of success. It doesn't have to be massive life success all the time. It's about small goals and small achievements that you're trying to connect with. You know, and what sort of solutions can they do that can help them to get there? This is the template. How, just hands up, how many of you have kind of thought about this and kind of got an idea of who your ideal personas are? A few of you? Have you written that down, Mariella? Is it?
I did. I tried to do this job a few times, so I finally did this persona. With my ideal customer, parents, and it's like I put which website they visit, where they buy their products, which search they're gonna do in Google, which social media they follow, and which email list they follow.
Cool. And by doing that, what did that help you think?
Help me a lot when I write the message, because it's like I see Rose, I put a name as well, and I try to make a figure. So it's like it's very easy for me to focus when I'm gonna write an email, a blog, a message, a copyright in my websites. It's very easy to focus because it's
Fantastic.
like I'm talking here.
Okay, thank you.
Better.
So, I mean, I think this is a pretty crude thing, but it's just a mechanism by which to start thinking about some of these questions. So, you know, how do they think? What's their analytical style? And all of this kind of helps in terms of how you approach people. What gets people excited? You know, money, status, awards, what is it? How do they present themselves? You know, formal, casual, making decisions. You know, do people just kind of respond and react, or is this a well thought out, well thought through decision? You know, what is it that's going to get to that point where they're going to buy from you, connect with you? You know, what values and beliefs do they have? Is it pretty casual, or is there something a little bit more serious than that? And how do they speak? How do they communicate? Because then you want to try and speak in that similar language. So as a quick example on this, this is one which we did for Apple. So, you know, Simon Sinek was talking about Apple earlier on. So if you think about how they speak, it's like, you know, there's an intelligence, but there's a passion, and there's a, you know, something that people love design, and there's, you know, they are culturally aware that there is a point at which people will buy Apple because, you know, it's got design credentials over and above. You know, I think he talked about Gateway. I mean, they've gone by the wayside, I think, but, you know, sort of something a bit more tawdry, you know. And thinking style, people think, you know, that thinking creatively, they think outside of the box, which I hate as an expression, but the thing is, they may not actually think out of the box because, you know, not that many people do. But if they believe that they do, if they want to do, if they aspire to do that, you can start to connect in with that level of aspiration as well. You know, that they have excitement, kind of achieving goals, and there's that authenticity. There was something about those early days of Apple which helped shape its whole brand in terms of, you know, being real. It was something that we were putting it in against the big guy. I don't know if you remember the sledgehammer being thrown into Big Brother and, you know, breaking the stranglehold of IBM and Microsoft. There was something kind of revolutionary about this as well. And presentation, that, you know, it's stylish, but, you know, not too formal. There's a kind of casualness to it as well. You know, and people want to make the world a better place. I think that was even their catchphrase at one point. And, you know, the decision making it's, you know, people like to think of themselves as intelligent as an Apple purchaser, but ultimately, you know, the majority of people go, oh, but it's so nice, it's shiny, and, you know, people actually get there stroking their phones and things because it's so nice. So, you know, that's a gut reaction. That's having like a really positive response to it. So have a think about that. Let's not do that now. We'll come on to something else, but, you know, have a look at this and just start to write down what persona are you trying to connect with. And the chances are there may well be more than one. But as Mariella says, that if you can identify who that core person, who forms the core part of your customer, then that will really help in terms of when you're taking decisions going, does that fit this persona? If I do this, is my persona going to care two hoots about it or not? And if they're not, then that gives you quite a strong indication that you're doing the wrong thing. And if they do, then they are.
Go back to the previous slide, would you? Sorry to interrupt. No, the one just thank you.
Yeah, I emailed this one to you yesterday, Judith.
Oh,
so
no,
you'll have it.
Came out very small. I couldn't read it. Sorry.
Oh, fine. Okay. I'll send it off again. But if you want to, I'll share it all at the end as well.
Thank you.
Okay. So number 2, talk to the buyer. So, I mean, the important thing about this is then there's always a danger that we make assumptions. We think we know who this person is. We think we know how they think. Quite often we try and reflect thinking, well, I'd like this, so they're probably like me. But actually, the more you can get away from that, the better. It's all about them. And the only way to really know that is to talk to them. And I might ask you about this in a second, Tracy, not to throw it on you completely unawares, but, you know, there's lots of ways that you can start to connect with people. It's so much easier now than it ever was as well. So, you know, how do you connect with people through social media or in industry forums, or, you know, and this is a great way to try and find opportunities to meet people. I mean, say in person, but, you know, that's probably not an option at the moment, but there's no reason why we can't do it in a format like that. A virtual person at least, or, you know, or over the phone or through email or whatever. And the goal isn't to pitch the product or the service at the moment. The goal is to try and understand who they are, what they need, how you fit in with what they want, and not to pitch yet because it's a bit too soon. I mean, you can plant a seed that there's going to be a solution coming in, but it's really just about trying to keep that level of awareness of what's, you know, what the need is that you have. Identify all the areas where your product is going to provide the most amount of value. And then it's useful also to be able to learn how your buyer persona talks about the problems as they see them. Because if you understand it from their point of view, then you can start to position the solution as something that they would be looking at as resolving their particular issues, not something that you're trying to push onto them. And the more you can do that, the more subtle you can be, the better. And if you use their language, you can help that to create much better marketing messages. I was just thinking, Tracy, because you were talking yesterday about networking and being quite active with that, and I just wondered, just to give a kind of an example of kind of how you've gone about that, because you've started to develop some really interesting conversations, and actually someone that's emanating in something quite concrete and potential prospect as well.
There you go. So as part of my, I guess you can call it marketing strategy, I have been attending quite a few online networking events. And this is a really useful way to help you figure out who your customer is, because it's very likely that you'll meet someone who will have an opinion about what you're trying to do. And instead of just pitching to them what your idea is, I found just asking questions, you know, what are their pain points? What's going to make their life a bit easier? Why would they even consider something that you're doing, whether it's a product or a service? And just collating all this feedback, because it starts to help you formulate a picture of what your potential customers are dealing with in their day-to-day life. I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with personas, because I've done it with clients in the past and it's worked really well. But then in other cases, it's become a bit formulaic, because you kind of think, well, you know, someone fits that brief, but it's so bespoke. And I think you can get overwhelmed by having, you know, 10 personas. I just kind of want to think about 2 or 3 people. That's enough for me to deal with in my head. So I think, you know, I think there needs to be a bit of caution here so that people don't get overwhelmed, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Yeah, no, I think this is really about just trying to zero in on a really, you know, kind of like the key customer things. You know, you're right. Kind of trying to create 10 is just going to send you crazy. So it's just about having an idea. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, the persona may not be for everyone, but having an idea of who your customers are is still very important. And so going through some of this, I mean, you don't have to draw the pictures, but just being able to understand how they talk and as Tracy's saying, it kind of helps you understand better how you need to present what it is that you want to do and what problems you're trying to solve. Mariella, yeah.
So in my experience, I also have like a broad, you know, for everyone. And with the time, I learned that focus with one doesn't mean the other will come. They're still gonna be attracted to your offer, but you have one speech and you can like relax your mind when you are preparing all your marketing communication or efforts. And anyway, the other people gonna feel appeal to the product. So they will come anyway, but you have one focus that you can like go towards it. That's what the conclusion I get.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I don't know if it can help.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Okay, well, let's come into the next one. Understand what your customers need now and in the future. So it's about sort of, you know, essentially it's about flexibility, you know, being flexible and making sure that you stay up. So where you're at the moment is probably, you know, you're all looking about those USPs. It's all very much in the right place. And I mean, the one thing with product market fit is it's quite hard to know when you have it, and sometimes it's easier to know when you don't have it. And I think companies have failed because they've misunderstood what product market fit really is. And BlackBerry is probably a good example of that from, you know, recent times when, you know, they had the same quality that perfected their product market fit was the keyboard. You know, they kind of had this keyboard exactly what people wanted, and it was at the cutting edge of the time, but it got taken over. And that's when you know, when the iPhone came out, suddenly it was like people, oh no, we don't need to be able to push buttons, do all of this on the screen. And they just didn't stay up. They didn't stay consistent. They didn't stay thinking about, okay, well, how do we maintain originality? So product market fit, bit fickle and can change. So trying to keep up with that is really important as well. You know, and conversely, you know, think of another phone company, Nokia. Nokia was world-beating leader because they had changeable features. Now, they weren't technology. Everyone said, oh, Motorola's the best technology. But actually, customers didn't care about technology. They loved the idea that they could take the front off one phone and put like a different look on it instead. And that's really what people wanted. Same goes for, you know, VHS and Betamax, kind of in the old video wars. And, you know, there's probably all, this goes back into the creation of the telegraph, you know, that there were various different arguments between the, you know, is it a 2-needle telegraph or a 5-needle telegraph? You know, it was just all of this different thing. So it's about trying to find out exactly what the most important one is. Judith.
Yes, following on exactly on what you're saying, I'm very interested in how to future-proof a product, because for the last 20 years at least, we've seen so many products, new products being launched, and then other products following on and leapfrogging them into the market. The most recent example of this must be Zoom. which has leapfrogged Skype in communications. And I'm very interested in how to future-proof to make sure that whatever I'm designing now will be useful in 10 years' time. So, you know, that's a very long time today.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that if Andrew's got a view on this, but I would say that you can't necessarily future-proof because the world is changing so quickly. And the example you just given is that Skype just didn't innovate. And the problem is that if you have a successful company, then what happens is that you're in a really fortunate position because it's you and it's a small team, and you're able to think really agilely. And if you need to make a change, you can do that. But once you get into a position of dominance, you start having this whole management structure put in place. And that management is not focused on thinking of new ideas. It's focused on delivering the idea that you have. So the business essentially is created in a way which stifles innovation. Innovation creates change, and that change actually is unpleasant, kind of that model. So the only way that you can, I mean, if you're a big successful company, like a Google or a Facebook, you don't actually innovate so much now. You just buy the innovators. So you buy Instagram, or you try to buy Snapchat, and you kind of buy these other people who look like they're going to do better or might overtake you, and then you just bring them in. And so that's your innovation strategy, because it doesn't stand still, and I don't think you can future-proof. All you can do is think at best 3 years ahead. Andrew, any thought on that?
I think maybe even 3 years is a long time.
Well, that's true.
I mean, you go, an organisation and the team changes. So an organisation of 1 is very different from an organisation of 10, which is very different from an organisation of 30, which is very different from an organisation of 70, which is very different from an organisation of 200. It changes so fast. So I think from a starting perspective, if you've got a view of where you want to be in, think them as goals. And I think it's an admirable goal, Judith, to think about, well, I need to future-proof this and think about where I need to be in 5-10 years. But, you need to, from my perspective, from my experience, I think startups are better served by thinking about where they're going to be tomorrow and what they're doing tomorrow and what they're doing next week. So it comes back to, if you haven't got a customer, the thought is, where's my first customer coming from? Or where's my first 10 customers coming from? Or where are my first 100 customers coming from? Don't think about having 1 million customers. That just means that you won't focus on getting the 10. And I think back to the point that Tracy raised about personas, and Anthony, there's nothing wrong with having 10 personas, but the absolute reality is that you won't be able to deal with all of them. You've got to pick one. So when you start, you may well have 10, 9, 8, 7, however many personas you want. But as Mariella said, you've got to focus on 1 or focus on 2 if you have to. That doesn't stop the others from coming. But each of those personas, if you've done your personas correctly, I'm not a huge fan of personas either, but if you've done your personas correctly, you will need to market to them, you'll need to sell to them in different ways, and they will want different products. If your personas want the same product, they're not different personas, they're the same persona. You've just not thought about it right. So if you end up with that many personas, you have to go through the process of being pretty brutal and saying, right, this is my first one. This is who I'm going to target. This is who I'm going to sell to. And then you can only add the others further along. So for me, I think I'd be focusing on 3 to 6 months and figure out where I'm trying to get to then. And much beyond that, I guarantee you'll change your mind in 3 months. It'll be a different picture of where you need to be and how it will change it. It changes so fast. So just keep that big vision in mind, but have the reality of where you are trying to get to at that immediate time. For me personally.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think that's so important. You just have to kind of keep rethinking and rethinking to keep it relevant and keep it fresh. I was just interested as a kind of, sorry.
I was just going to say one more thing on product market fit, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
My only rule about product market fit is if you have to ask whether you've got it, you haven't. Basically, you know when you've got it. I think I've been close to getting true product market fit once. And that was in an organization of, well, ClickTools, when we sold ClickTools, we were 60 people. We had over 1,000 customers, and I still don't think we had product market fit. I think we were really, really close, but I don't think we were there. So if you're thinking about it, you haven't got it. You'll know, basically.
I mean, I was interested just as a kind of thought exercise about whether you could think of something that we all know, whether that has good product market. I was thinking about HS2. So, you know, if you were the customer for HS2 saying, would you invest 106 billion into building it? You know, and actually is speed what people want? You know, my thoughts are, you know, it's kind of really, really interesting. And I'm not clear that it is. I mean, you think, well, you know, the alternative is you could, if you just provided free gigabit Wi-Fi inside the existing train networks, just, you know, improve the signaling a little bit more, gave everyone free champagne, and, you know, for that matter, an all-you-can-eat buffet for the whole journey. It might take 30 minutes longer, but you'll have a damn sight better experience in there, and it would still be cheaper than spending 106 billion in the interim. So trying to find out what it is that people really want, you know, I think that it's worth, because we get wedded to our products and we think about, okay, well, what do we want to do? You know, how can we make somebody buy this product? It comes back in going, but what do people want? And then how do we tailor our product into it? And then that tries to maintain its relevancy. So we'll come on to 4. So let's jump to 5. We'll come to 4 in a second. Oh, here we are. So I'm gonna just go slightly off piece a little bit. Bear with me for this, because I'm interested in credibility. How do you create credibility? So has anybody read *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari? No? Right. You've got to read it. It's a really interesting book. So he talks about why did sapiens become the dominant species? Why did, you know, overtake Homo erectus and Cro-Magnon and Neanderthals and all that sort of thing? And part of it was to do with the ability to have abstract thoughts. So he gives an example and he says, well, what's Peugeot? What's Peugeot? What is a company? So you think, well, what's Peugeot? Is it the car? Again, well, it is the car, but that's not what the company is, because the company's got more than that. It's like, so is it the people? Well, they're important, but then there's the manufacturing plants as well, and then we've got the showrooms. And when it comes down to it, really what a company is just a signature in Paris which says this company exists. So the company doesn't, it's kind of it's a metaphorical, existential sort of thing, really, but we've all collectively decided that we're going to believe in this concept company, and that's because we have this ability to have abstract thought. So it's a bit off-piece and a bit of a ramble, but it is a really good book, and do have a look at it, because he's a fantastic thinker. But what I like about it is it points out our susceptibility to illusion. We as people, if you're credible, people are willing to believe that you're up to the job, because we think, we don't just think about what's in front of us, we think more widely about that. And that gives us space as a business to be able to think and connect with people on a level which is more important than our than our product specifically. So people want to buy from the people who they believe in. And half the time they don't understand what it is that you do. They don't understand how it operates. It's creating quite a technical product. Let's look at John Jenkins, but for the moment, but creating quite a technical product, and you bet your bottom dollar that half the accountants who want to use it have no idea how that functions. So what they're really buying into is the faith that you're going to produce something that isn't going to make them look like an idiot and is actually going to help them out. So I think that kind of gives you a little bit of freedom, that if you can present yourself as the company which can provide the solutions, that's half the batting. The product is not everything, it's everything else that goes around it as well. Now, I know you're all going to have great belief in your products, but let's look at Serco. So Serco have won the 108 million track and trace contract, which doesn't work. It's not even working that well. And at the moment, they're predicting an increase in 20 to 30 million increased profits in this year alone. And they got the contract because people have faith in them. It doesn't matter whether it works or not. The chances are there's a very strong chance they're going to get an extended additional 400 million to keep rolling this out over the next year or so. So, but government sees them as being credible and a safe pair of hands, and that's how they win their contracts. So if you can create the credibility, that's going to help every bit as much as the product itself. The product is just the tool that serves the greater purpose. So that kind of whole product market fit is also a bit like Apple. You know, it's easier when your persona respects your brand. You know, and also poor product market fit can ruin the credibility. So, you know, like Cheetos lip balm, maybe, you know, you can still fail, even if you've won. Cheetos have got the respect, but if the product doesn't work, that doesn't also work. I'll be with you in a second, Judith. And you know, so the quickest way is about telling a story. It's about what your brand's about, how did your product or service originate, and why the buyer persona should care about you. And stories are a great way to do that, but there are other ways to establish credibility. And a major one is just being involved in the industry, like Tracy said, of, you know, going out, networking, being a part of that, writing guest articles for blogs or magazines, or, you know, being part of activities and events, and show your prospects that you know what you're doing. And all of that helps create trust, and trust is critical for creating that credibility. Judith, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't wish to interrupt. I just wanted to mention Serco. Serco may be a slightly easy way out for the government, which is probably why they grabbed them with both hands, because I think Serco already managed a lot of public contracts in the prisons, in the hospitals, yeah. And when they came up with the track and trace offering, the government already had a certain amount of belief in their capability, even though they're not seen as the most effective in whatever they do. They come into a lot of criticism in the prisons, in the cleaning in hospitals, all the things they already provide. So it was a little bit of an easy way out for the government.
Well, I think that's kind of interesting in terms of understanding what the value is for the government. The government just can just offload responsibility, because the government can't deliver things. Whenever they try and deliver something, you know, let's think, you know, the government had the opportunity to deliver an amazing party for the millennium, and what we got was a Millennium Dome and long queues. So, you know, but again, it's understanding what the value is. So let me come on to that specific thing about the value now. Okay, value proposition. I think we've kind of talked around this a lot. I think I'm probably just going to crack on and kind of get into looking about that value proposition canvas. So this is the canvas. I want to show you another video because it's a really nice way to explain how this operates, and then we'll come and talk about it and have a go at doing it in a second.
Let's look at the value proposition canvas, a tool that will help you design, test, build, and manage great customer value propositions. It's like a plugin to the business model canvas. The tool is based on two elements of your business model: the customer segment who you intend to create value for, and the value proposition which you believe will attract customers. With the value proposition canvas, map out both in more granularity and show the fit between what you offer and what customers want. The customer segment profile describes the characteristics of your customers in more detail. The profile is composed of the jobs your customers are trying to get done in their work and in their lives, the related pains outlining the negative aspects they hate and would like to avoid, and third, the gains describing the positive outcomes and benefits which your customers would love to have. Now let's look at the profile in more detail. Jobs describe an important issue your customers are trying to solve in their work or in their lives. It could be the tasks they're trying to perform and complete, the problems they are trying to solve, or the needs they are trying to satisfy. And then jobs can have a functional, social, or emotional intent. Some jobs will be crucial to the customers, others will be trivial. And the second aspect here are the pains describing anything that annoys your customers before, during, and after getting a job. This could be undesired costs and situations, negative emotions, or risks. Again, some customer pains will be severe, others light. And the third aspect of the profile are the gains describing the outcomes, the benefits your customers require, expect, desire, or would be surprised by. This includes things like functional utility, social gains, positive emotions, and cost savings. Again, some outcomes and benefits will be more relevant to customers than others. These three elements of the profile describe the customer characteristics that you can observe in the market. Now let's look at the value proposition map, describing the features of your value proposition, which you are designing to address your customers' most important jobs, pains, and gains. The map is composed of the products and services your value proposition is built around, the pain relievers outlining how your products and services alleviate customer pains, and third, the gain creators describing the positive outcomes and benefits your products and services create for your customers. Now let's look at the map in more detail. First, the products and services simply outline the bundle of products and services that you're offering customers to help them get a functional, social, or emotional job done and to address their pains and gains. Now, second aspect here, the pain relievers make explicit how your products and services will alleviate specific customer pains before, while, and after the customer is trying to get a job done. They show which of all the customer pains your value proposition is addressing by eliminating or reducing them. The next aspect here are the gain creators. They make explicit how your products and services create customer gains. They show which of all the customer gains your value proposition is addressing by creating benefits and outcomes. Now you have achieved a so-called problem solution fit when the features of your value proposition map perfectly match the characteristics of your customer segment profile. When the market validates this match and your value proposition gets traction with real customers, you have achieved a so-called product market fit. But don't forget, successful businesses have more than just a great value proposition. They have a great business model that makes a customer value proposition possible. Now, do you have what it takes to, they have.
There we are. So let's just pause on there for a moment. It just kind of ends up into a slightly cheesy ending, so I'm going to save us all from that. It's really interesting that on this, I do quite a bit of assessment work, kind of looking at people applying for grants and for money. And I'm constantly staggered by the number of people who have fantastic technology and don't really know what they're going to do with it. So everything is really focused on about building that. Blockchain, for example, at the moment is a technology desperate for a problem to try and solve. So there's lots of really interesting things that you can create, but it's not clear you're doing this. So I think this part over here, trying to identify the customer jobs, the gains and the pains, is just a really good exercise to go through to understand why your product is going to fit them and how your product can fit into those. Because if you do it the other way around, if you create the products and services and go, oh, it does this and it stops this, the customers can just turn around going, well, I don't care about that because these are my problems and these are the things I'm trying to achieve. So if you're not building it for me, I don't care what you do. I don't care how good it is. I don't care if it's Motorola. I want my bloody, all right? I want to be able to change my fascias. That's what I want. So it's trying to get that level. So let's just come back into there. So so that is probably the next thing to try and do is let's spend 15 minutes trying to think about, particularly starting on the right hand side, start filling some of this in and writing out, what's interesting about the customer jobs is the jobs are not, not what professions do they have, but what individual tasks are they trying to achieve. I was thinking about this when I was talking with you actually yesterday, John Jenkins, is that whole idea that what you're trying to be able to deliver is something which can make someone's life easier. And that was in the way that you were describing it. So what are those specific problems and challenges that people have got? So if you could just spend a bit of time, and Andrew and I are here to ask some questions, answer any questions you got, but just start to think through. I mean, this lends in as the video went on to show kind of how this fit with the lean model canvas, but just filling this out in a bit more detail. And you got any sort of things to add before we do this?
No, other than I say no and then I add something. Yeah, on the jobs, try and make them really explicit jobs, as in things you actually have to do. And a discrete task as opposed to so in John Jenkins terms, my job isn't do my accounts. It's job as in record transaction in ledger sort of thing. So try and get down to a level of detail, not just some big generic thing. That's generally one thing that people start to do.
And I think that applies well with kind of what Mariella and Judith were talking as well, in terms of it's not about the fact that people, but what specifically are they trying to achieve as a result of it? You know, I'm trying to do this, therefore I will turn around to you, and you are the answer to me being able to achieve the task I've set myself to sort out. And that task might be as simple as, you know, I need to understand how to apply a plaster. But it may be a bit more complex than that. So just thinking about what specific jobs is it that people want to be able to resolve. And while they're doing that, I'm going to get some more water. How are you getting on? I'll do these crack on still. So we've not got a huge amount of time left. So Cecile, you say you've kind of completed one. So how do you fancy about just feeding back about what you've done and just talk it through, and we'll just see kind of if that raises any questions with other people.
Okay, so I'm focusing a little bit more on my Russian parents and also young people, which thank you, because I suddenly realized that they're completely crazy about Sherlock Holmes. So I've now, another one of it's on my list, but I think I'm going to up it with the priority. So basically, I think what they need to, the problems that they have is the ease of access to books, to language courses, to pronunciations, so their problem is that they want to learn English. Okay, so that's the job, and the job is that they have to do it by this, going on English courses, listening to other programs, being taught at school, reading books, having one-on-one lessons, having class lessons, having instructions and learning. So, and where the pains are, it's not easy to get to. It's difficult. There isn't valuable information there that can log into what they're thinking. So, so I thought what they're wanting to get and gain is they're wanting to gain to be able to study, to have the language courses, to have pronunciations. So I thought that to have a good fit to that, they need to have ease of access. They need to be able to see their progress, because it's all about progress and learning the language, which means that now my product's going to shift a little bit. It's all about building confidence. So they need to have the confidence to do it. And understanding, and I'm also thinking now, also because on that same thing is that people, young people who want to get into, I don't know why I'm thinking men, I don't know why I think, to get into global businesses. So they need to be able to understand the culture, they need to be able to be confident in speaking, they need to have the pronunciation. A lot of the confidence comes actually in speaking rather than in reading. So that's an area I'm going to look at. I also like the idea that you're belonging when you're in a group setting and everybody's helping together, because this is very, very fundamental. And it's also wanting to, one of their pain is not having, the opportunities, and then this having learning and being competent in the English language through this avenue will give them other opportunities. So that has actually made me, with my product, realize that I don't have a point on there, although this is a possibility, where they can be speaking themselves. But this is not an area I want to go into, but it is a possibility that it can be an add-on with some other people who are like English second language instructors or something, and to have like that virtual book club, because that may be possible that you just have once a month we all meet to talk about the kids come and talk about Beatrice Potter and what are the little rabbits and that kind, and then going up to more sophisticated things. But then there isn't a cultural thing, so I'm not sure if that was going to add or take away. But I think fundamentally we're wanting to improve the opportunities and make things better for them. And I think that my product can, with those things, bring it stronger together and a better fit. Does that make sense?
That sounds really good.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Really,
Okay.
yeah, no, I really like that.
Thank you. Oh, and also what you said before, and I think this is very important, is the experience. Okay. Actually, because you mentioned that before about the product market, and then you go Apple and da-da-da. And I have a teenager who just talks about Apple non-stop. But it is the whole experience of being a part of the Apple community, which is so fundamental. So I thought that was an interesting word to bring into my project.
What do you think is the real pain that people, the kind of the persona that you've got in mind have got in terms of, you know, so people do go to schools and they do go on, you know, they do read books and they do on courses. What do you think are the
Well, I think
fundamental?
the real pain is the confidence of speaking, which is not my product at all. so like, I think that is the real pain, which is why I kind of like, oh no, I need to, you know, put in. And I mean, people do say, oh yeah, you know, can you do, so like, you know, can you just have English conversational classes?
And do you think that's a stronger pain than, say, just accessibility?
I think it's a stronger pain further down the road.
Okay.
So I think that's, I think when you want to go into, you know, wanting to do interviews or wanting to go into a global company, then I think that is because people don't like, I don't know why, I mean, people who are foreigners who speak English with a beautiful accent, I think it's wonderful. But sometimes they personally don't. I don't know, Mariella, maybe you've got something to say there.
I was just writing to you that my pain will be how I can teach Alicia, for example, to speak better English while she's entertained and engaging, because it's very difficult to have her attention and increase her pronunciation or whatever she needs, the culture, but in a fun way. That will be my pain, how I can engage.
All right, so then it will be, and then you can engage on the listening skills. So the listening skills, which is what my product does, but not do the speaking. So maybe just, you know, they can inculcate the pronunciations and the way they say on listening. But I think
Yeah. Sorry, Judith had something to add.
Yes, you mentioned Beatrix Potter, Cecile, and I wondered if you saw that there was a cultural hurdle there. So I've got a suggestion which may or may not be helpful. But for example, you mentioned Russia. So if you're teaching pupils in Russian, you might like to read the book, Old Peter's Russian Tales, in English. It's written by Arthur Ransom, a very famous author. So they already feel at home. It's stories from Russia. And the same with the Scandinavian countries, the same with France. If you take a book to already help them to feel comfortable in their cultural surroundings, but in English. I don't know if that will be of any help to you.
I think that's definitely something to look into. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. I can't help on the accent. I can't help on the accent because I know from visiting Spain many times that I've got about 6 phrases. I speak several languages, but not Spanish. So I've got 6 phrases, and then I get to the end of that and say, oh, that's the limit of my Spanish. Do you speak English? And all of them do, and they speak very good English, but they're very self-conscious about their accents.
Yeah.
They speak very good English. They've been very well taught, as in Holland and in the Scandinavian countries. Now, I don't know how they do it in the Scandinavian countries, but they seem to have very, very good accents. One of the people who speaks perfect English, and English is not her mother tongue, is Mariella Frostrup. She's on television all the time, and the other one is Ulrika Johnson. They didn't, English is not their first language, and yet they speak perfect English. So maybe you can look into the Scandinavian example of how they get the accent so correct. In Holland, it's usually very good as well. You cannot tell when some of these people speak that they are not English, that they are either born in Holland or born in Scandinavia.
Cecile, have you managed to do much research with your target groups?
I mean, why I've just said that thing, that Russian thing, only because this last week, the people who have responded in the most positive way are my colleagues in Russia, which is quite interesting because it's just, I'm like, when I'm thinking about it, when Carolyn said that thing and I put it down, I just thought, okay, they're very positive. There's that kind of, so it's just a little bit of a feedback. But no, have I done no, I haven't. That's definitely, a thing I have to do is just do I have just asked.
We are going to come on to talking about it in a couple of weeks' time, sort of in terms of doing some research and some thoughts, and I'm going to have somebody called Sally, who's brilliant, who's actually, she used to be a consultant, kind of KPMG type person, but now working with what are they called? National Geographic, and no, not National Geographic, Ordnance Survey. And sort of in terms of kind of how do you kind of reproductize things like that, and so going through a lot of that sort of research about how to do that. So that's kind of interesting conversation. So look, we've hit time, and as ever, there isn't really kind of quite enough time. Any kind of final thoughts before we stop? I mean, I was going to say, if you can spend a bit more time thinking through this, and then we can maybe talk about this next week as well. But yeah, any thoughts before we finish?
It was very helpful, really interesting. Sparked lots of ideas in my mind. Thank you.
Okay.
I think for me, what's been fascinating is that I'm feeling like with the value proposition diagram, there's parts of it that I know really well, and there's other parts that could do with a lot more thought. And I think I might have approached one of them the wrong way around. So, yeah, it's actually brought up a lot of questions for me, which is great. And I think I'm going to email Andrew directly and just have a chat with him, because I'd like to have a one-on-one with him and just talk through what I'm thinking. Yeah. I think he put his email in the chat. So yeah, really good today. Thank you, Anthony.
Oh, pleasure. Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, one thing which I think is really interesting is there's a book, and I'll try and remember its name because I can't at the moment, but it's kind of in that world of somebody, it basically goes through a scenario, it's a conversation really, of somebody who has got a service company, design agency, who wants to be able to sell it, and then therefore has to come up with a product, and then goes through the whole process of productizing a service. And identifying that, you know, creating brands and logos for people is the way that you can do this, and this is a fairly regular structure that could be turned into a kind of a much more sellable business. And I think it's interesting in terms of you can create the product because you've identified the need and it comes out from the need. But if you started from that position to begin with, it probably would have gone wrong. But it kind of emerged out of ongoing long-term conversations with the client and understanding really what it is that you have that's valuable. So I'm not quite sure which bit you're saying that you've thought more about than others, or which bit you've gone maybe the wrong way around about, Tracy. But I think it's good to keep focusing on that right-hand side of the diagram and making sure the left-hand side feeds into it, because you've got a much better chance of connecting with something that people want. So next week probably maybe a slightly shorter session. I want to talk about blue ocean strategies. I don't know how valuable it is, but it's a way, again, it's a slightly different way of looking about how you fit in and how you start defining your niche, thinking about how do you stand up. You hear a lot about USPs, unique selling propositions, and it's just a way of thinking about it, which I think is quite interesting, and looking about a lot of it, I think maybe retrofits the concept to people who have done well in terms of carving out new markets and carving out new customer need. But I think it's quite a useful exercise just to think about it. So I probably won't go on too long about it, because I don't know if it's a distraction or a help, but I think it's certainly interesting and certainly worth the hour and a half of time to go into. So I'll be spending a bit of time on that next week. Meantime, if you could carry on getting the diagrams done, we can maybe feedback, maybe just try and keep it sort of like into a 2-minute snappy start, so we can just crack on. And if you can, technology issues withstanding, if we can start promptly at 10, because we can obviously run out of time too soon otherwise. And thank you. Yeah, it's been hopefully useful. Thank you for all the feedback and things that you've been giving as well. And look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry, one last thought. I am going to think, would you be, Tracy talked about talking with Andrew, would you be interested in trying to have some one-to-ones with some interesting people who I think could be valuable for what you're trying to do?
Of course.
Some mentoring. So I think I might try and do that for later on and set up some one-to-one mentoring sessions for later in November.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. That would be fantastic.
Brilliant. Okay, fabulous. All right, have a great day. See you all next week.
Thank you, everyone. Work hard. See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.